poor little girl was just helping her mom wipe tables at the diner. But when a foreign customer called in and no one understood German, she stood up and responded fluently, leaving the entire room stunned. What no one knew, one of the customers who overheard that call happened to be the CEO of a billion-dollar corporation. And the very next day, the lives of that little girl and her mother changed forever. Because sometimes, one well-timed sentence can open the door to destiny. Rachel Myers hurried through the back door of Granville Grounds Café just as the clock struck 6:58 a.m. One hand balanced a tray of croissants, the other adjusted her faded brown apron. Her dark brown hair was pulled into a rushed bun, her sneakers were worn thin, and her faint smile, that was her uniform every day for the past 3 years. "Morning, Rachel." Marcy, the cafe manager, called out. "Still haven't had a sip of water yet. That's probably a win," she replied, half joking, half true. This morning, Rachel's 7-year-old daughter Sophie had to come to work with her. The school had a community service day, and there was no one else to watch her. Sophie sat quietly in the corner, coloring in an old activity book, a small sandwich in hand, and a backpack covered in cat stickers. Rachel glanced at her, eyes flickering with something between exhaustion and quiet gratitude. 8:02 a.m. The office crowd began to flood in. One ordered a latte, another was anxious about an almond milk cappuccino, someone else snapped about the lagging Wi-Fi. Rachel moved like a machine, brewing drinks, offering strained smiles. She had once dreamed of working at the United Nations. Now, she could operate the espresso machine better than she could write a geopolitical analysis. The intercom phone rang. Rachel was about to answer when a customer spilled espresso across the counter, making her fumble to clean it up. And just then her daughter's voice rang out, "Hallo, guten Morgen, wer spricht da bitte?" The entire cafe froze for a moment. Rachel turned her head, stunned. Sophie, having just reached the phone, was speaking fluent German. Her voice was small, but her pronunciation was uncannily precise. Whoever was on the other end of the line sounded equally surprised. Sophie politely said, "Einen Moment bitte, ich hol meine Mama." Rachel grabbed the phone, her face flushing. "Sorry, she's just been playing around with it." A man's voice spoke up behind her. No, she spoke it very well. Berlin, northern dialect. Rachel turned around. Standing at the counter was a tall man in a gray suit with neatly combed salt and pepper hair, silver gray eyes, and a smile that was hard to read. Lucas Granville, CEO of Granville Corp. Rachel froze. "You're her mother?" he asked. She nodded. "Then I'd like you to come to the 37th floor tomorrow morning," Lucas said, his tone light as air. Is something wrong?" Rachel stammered. Lucas glanced at Sophie, then back at Rachel. "I think life is knocking again, this time in German." Rachel had barely slept all night. She lay on the sagging couch, eyes fixed on the cracked ceiling above her, heart swirling like an unshaken mocha. The 37th floor? She didn't even know how many floors the Granville building had. What business did a coffee shop worker have in the domain of a CEO? The next morning, she dropped Sophie off with Marcy, giving strict instructions not to play with the phone. Rachel wore the crispest white shirt she owned, a pair of old slacks, and had her hair neatly tied up. The borrowed heels from her neighbor rubbed painfully against her ankles, but she kept her back straight as she stepped into the mirrored elevator of Granville Tower. Floor 37. The doors opened to a silent space that felt like another world. No coffee grinders, no scent of pastries, just thick carpet, crystal clear glass, and an abstract painting the size of a wall. A young assistant wearing a headset greeted her and invited her into the main office. Lucas Granville stood with his back to the room, holding a cup of tea. Tea, not coffee. "You're right on time," he said, still facing the window. Rachel clutched the strap of her handbag. "I still don't understand. Why am I here?" Lucas set his teacup down on the table and handed her a folder. "I looked into the internal records. You graduated with honors in international relations. You hold a C2 certification in German. You worked as a research assistant at an institute, correct?" She nodded, her chest tightening. "So why are you now standing behind a coffee counter?" It was a question she'd heard too many times, from old classmates, distant aunts, rejection emails. She gave a dry smile. "One bad night, one wrong man, and one child who needs 3 meals a day." Lucas didn't flinch. I need someone to coordinate a new program for the Granville Foundation, working with our German partners. Someone local, culturally aware, fluent in the language and analytical. Temporary. 3 months. Rachel sat frozen. But I'm not in the field anymore. You're not just anything, he cut her off. I see someone smart, qualified, buried under double electric bills and triple shifts. He slid the paper toward her. Temporary contract. Starts Monday. I trust my gut. Rachel looked at the paper. The salary was 6 times what she was making now. 6 times. She swallowed hard. What about Sophie? I can't leave her all day. Lucas smiled for the first time. She reminds me of my little sister back when we were kids. If needed, I'll arrange childcare. She looked at him, her heart filled with confusion and the faintest glimmer of hope. Life was knocking again. All she had to do was be brave enough to answer. Monday, 7 a.m. Rachel stood in front of the mirror, her shirt collar neatly buttoned, lips painted in a muted terracotta shade, hair half pinned in a way that looked polished but not overdone. Sophie had been dropped off at a private daycare, clean, trustworthy, and arranged by Lucas in less than 24 hours. She stepped onto the 37th floor. This time, it didn't feel unfamiliar. But inside, every cell in her body was still buzzing with nerves. A trial job unlike any other. No resume, no interview, no screening process. Just a latte and a conversation that flipped her world upside down. Lucas wasn't there. His young assistant, Harper, led her to a small office with a glass wall overlooking the city skyline. Lucas said, let her start with the German market report on small to mid-sized companies with CSR partnership potential. Deadline, 48 hours. Rachel blinked. I don't have data access? It's granted. Harper replied, handing her a brand new laptop. Password is your daughter's name. Rachel froze. How did he know? She didn't ask. She knew Lucas was the kind of man who came into every situation fully informed. Instead of worrying, she powered on the laptop. Her fingers instinctively began typing, searching German sources, taking notes, comparing ESG sustainability scores across businesses. She even forgot to eat lunch. By 5 p.m., Harper walked in with a completely different look from that morning. No one in this company believes you were a barista for 3 years. I looked over your draft analysis. Honestly, it's impressive. Rachel let out a laugh, the first moment of relief all day. Thank you. But I'm still not sure I'm really cut out for this. Harper sat on the edge of the desk, tilting her head. Lucas isn't someone who picks people easily. One time, a senior director got fired after just 3 days. But you're different. He didn't choose you just because of your resume. Rachel looked up. What do you mean? I mean, Harper lowered her voice. I've worked here for 3 years, and I've never seen Lucas invite anyone to dinner. Rachel froze. Dinner? He messaged me to reserve a table at Le Jardin, 7 p.m. tonight, for 2 people. Take a wild guess who the other one is. Rachel felt her face flush. Harper winked. And you should know he's never shared his system password with anyone, except you. Rachel's eyes widened. System? Harper nodded. That laptop you're using isn't a regular company device. It's Lucas's. The reason you could log in? That password wasn't just Sophie. It was Sophie R. Lucas created that username 3 months ago. Rachel froze, her chest tightening. Something was being revealed, and maybe this wasn't just a job. The final afternoon of Rachel's trial period passed in a blur of keystrokes. But by 7 p.m., she still felt an odd surge of energy. Harper had messaged, Mr. Lucas is waiting for you in the lobby. She quickly slipped into a modest work dress, sheer heel-high tights, dabbed on some earthy brown lipstick to soothe the dryness in her throat, and headed downstairs. The building's lobby glowed under soft amber lights, jazz drifting lazily from hidden speakers. Lucas greeted her with a slight bow, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, his half-smile radiating composed charm. He extended a hand. It's time. I hope Rachel will feel comfortable. Rachel nodded, her heart pounding. They stepped into a sleek company electric car, gliding past towering buildings until it stopped in front of Les Jardins, a tucked-away French restaurant nestled in a cobblestone alley. Small lanterns hung throughout the garden. Climbing roses curled along the walls, and the entire space glowed with the warmth of whispered secrets. They sat at a table near a patch of lavender. Laura, the server, bowed slightly as she recited the orders. For Miss Rachel, the beetroot and goat cheese salad. For Mr. Lucas, the red wine braised beef. Lucas smiled with a touch of flair. You seem to enjoy things that are delicate but surprising. Rachel gave a shy laugh. Thanks, it all feels very refined. As the soft clinking of glasses filled the air, Lucas spoke first. He paused, as if weighing each word carefully. Rachel held her breath. I invited you here, not just because of your outstanding ESG analysis, but because I want to understand the person behind the numbers. Rachel fell silent. She thought of holding Sophie close while she slept, of the outlines left unfinished, of the half-drunk cup of coffee at midnight. Finally, she exhaled. I used to think I'd buried my past, but some things never really stay buried. Lucas gave a slow nod, his gaze steady and deep. I know you've been away from the field for 6 years. I left something behind too when I studied abroad in Germany. His voice grew warm. When I was little, my mom taught me German. She passed away when I was 20. I've carried that part of her with me across Europe ever since. The beetroot salad was set before Rachel. Tangy and rich, the creamy goat cheese melting gently on her tongue. She closed her eyes for a moment as she took a bite. Each flavor seemed to awaken old memories, both sharp and sweet. My daughter, Sophie, she's learning German because I want her to understand the world, but I never told her the real reason her father left. Lucas gently placed his hand over hers. I saw the email you sent Harper. It said your brother died in a car accident in Berlin. Rachel stiffened. No one else had known that. I didn't want anyone looking at me with pity. He exhaled softly. Some wounds need to be shared in order to heal. Then, from his inside pocket, he pulled out a small black USB stick. These are the notes on the Germany project, but also the first phase of a scholarship fund I'm launching in my mother's name. I don't want you to just be an assistant, Rachel. I want you to be a partner. Her heart felt like it might burst. She looked at the golden light reflecting off the tiny device, a second chance not just at her career, but a shot at building something meaningful, something that could give other children what she had once dreamed of. Tears welled up and spilled silently down her cheeks. Lucas leaned slightly closer, his smile filled with quiet hope. Tomorrow morning, we begin the real work. But tonight, it's just 2 people, a dinner, and the truth. Rachel nodded, reaching for his hand, her voice thick with emotion. I accept, and thank you for believing in me. Beneath the soft glow of the lanterns, 2 strangers slowly became something else. Not just coworkers, but kindred spirits, stepping into a new chapter together, where every path held promise, and every silence carried a story waiting to be told. Late autumn in Berlin carried a strange chill, as if everything hovered in a space between past and present. In that atmosphere, Rachel strode across the grand lobby of the hotel hosting the conference. She was with Granville's delegation, but her mind wasn't entirely there. Not completely. The strategic partnership meeting with a major German tech conglomerate had drawn many high-ranking executives. As the doors to the conference room swung open, Rachel froze. The man standing at the head of the table, his hair now streaked with gray, but his eyes unmistakable, was John, her former lover, and Sophie's biological father. She forced herself to breathe steadily, walking into the room as if nothing had happened. But her heart pounded wildly, each beat a rush of memories. The tiny apartment in France, sleepless nights full of hope, and the cold turn of his eyes when he found out she was pregnant. John, or rather Thomas Bauer, as he now went by, senior executive of the partner corporation, visibly stiffened when their eyes met. Just for a moment. Then he quickly regained his composure, wearing the mask of professionalism. Throughout the meeting, he never addressed her directly, issuing decisions and commands in crisp, distant German. When the meeting ended, Rachel was packing up her documents when an assistant quietly approached her. Mr. Bauer would like to see you on the rooftop at the hotel's private bar. She went up, not out of curiosity, but because she knew she had to face him. Thomas was already there, holding a glass of wine. The warm yellow light cast shadows on his face, making him look older than she remembered. He smiled, that old smile that used to soften her heart, but now it carried a wary edge. You're still the same as the day you left, he said, his voice low and rough. Still believe in justice, in truth. Rachel tightened her grip on her purse strap. And you're still good at dodging responsibility. He shrugged. The past shouldn't be dragged up again. You have a stable position at Granville now. Don't let the past ruin the present. She stayed silent. Then he looked her straight in the eye, for the first time during their conversation and spoke slowly. "You should keep the baby a secret if you want to keep working in peace." A cold shiver ran down Rachel's spine, not from Berlin's weather, but from the man who once meant everything to her, now standing before her like a shadow from the past, ready to crush her future just to keep himself clean. She left the bar without another word. In the chill of the Berlin night, Rachel knew the real storm was only just beginning. The news hit the Granville meeting room like a crashing wave. Just days after her business trip to Berlin, Rachel was notified by HR that she was under investigation for allegedly spying for a rival company. The rumor spread quickly, unleashed by Thomas Bauer, the man she once loved and the father of her daughter, like an unexpected bomb. He suggested that Rachel had exploited their relationship to gather sensitive information, casting doubt over her honor and career. Rachel was devastated because the truth was far from that. She had been a legitimate collaborator with another company before joining Granville, a fact she never hid, but she was never a spy. What hurt the most was the suspicion from Lucas, her close colleague and the one she trusted most. "Why don't you believe me?" Rachel asked, her voice choking as she faced Lucas in the small meeting room. But Lucas's eyes couldn't hide his doubt. Thomas's words were too powerful and influential. While Rachel struggled with the distrust, a silent internal investigation had already begun. The numbers, the evidence slowly began to reveal a different side of Thomas Bauer, the powerful senior executive. It turned out that Thomas was not only the one who spread false rumors to destroy Rachel, but he was also under investigation for embezzling funds from the partner company in Germany. Using his connections and personal influence, Thomas had long used his power to cover up his wrongdoing. As the evidence mounted, Thomas was suspended right there in Berlin, the very place where he once challenged Rachel. The news spread widely, marking the most painful fall of the man who had once rejected her, right in front of the entire corporation and international partners. Rachel stood on the sidelines of the event, watching Thomas step down from the position of power he once held, her gaze no longer filled with anger, but with a deep understanding of the wounds and personal struggles each person carries. Maybe now he finally sees the true value of the truth, she told herself, feeling a slight sense of relief. Their battle was far from over, but at least Rachel had proven she was not the traitor. And in the darkness of the storms, a small glimmer of hope began to shine. That justice, though delayed, could still come. After months filled with turmoil and hardship, Rachel finally received official news from the company's board of directors. She was appointed Director of International Relations, a position that not only recognized her true capabilities, but also opened a new door full of hope and responsibility. Rachel knew this was more than just a career step forward. It was an opportunity to help single mothers like herself, those struggling to balance overwhelming work demands and life's pressures. She envisioned a new chapter where vulnerable women would be heard and supported, so they wouldn't have to face those tough journeys alone. But life was never that simple. One night, as Rachel and Sophie slept soundly in their familiar apartment, a loud explosion shattered the silence. Flames erupted fiercely from the floor below, rapidly spreading upward. Mother and daughter woke in panic, managing to escape just in time. But everything, belongings, documents, precious keepsakes, was destroyed in the fire. The news of the fire deeply worried Lucas. He immediately contacted Rachel and invited both of them to stay temporarily at his villa until they could find a more stable solution. Lucas's support was like a bright light in the darkness for Rachel. During those days at the villa, his care and genuine concern slowly eased her fears and exhaustion. Lucas was not just a dedicated colleague, but a true friend, quietly standing by Rachel whenever she needed him. Rachel felt a deep connection growing between them, stories shared over quiet evenings with coffee, soft laughter, and moments of holding hands for comfort. That bond slowly stretched beyond the boundaries of work, becoming something warm and special. Sophie quickly came to see Lucas as family. The little girl found in him the protection and safety she had long missed. Their afternoons spent playing in the villa's vast garden made Rachel believe this was truly the beginning of a calmer, more peaceful life. But Rachel knew love wasn't just about sweet moments. It demanded courage, patience, and a readiness to face the past. There were still many tasks ahead, many unknown challenges, but now she was no longer alone. Stepping through the villa's door and gazing at the shimmering lights outside, Rachel silently told herself, "Life may bring storms, but here, among those who are genuine, I will find peace and the strength to keep moving forward." Just when Rachel thought the storms in her life had passed, a new one began to gather, darker and more dangerous than ever. The fire that consumed her apartment was no accident. It was a deliberate act of revenge, a vicious strike aimed at her from the shadows. Rachel and Lucas worked together to uncover the cause of the fire. The police acted quickly, but the initial findings shocked them both. The burn patterns showed signs of accelerants being poured into the apartment, ruling out an electrical fault as initially suspected. Rachel couldn't help but wonder, who would want to hurt her this way? Several names flashed through her mind, but one stood out above all: Thomas, the former senior director of their German partner company, who had tried to ruin her reputation at work and didn't hesitate to use any means to threaten and sabotage her. Lucas also believed Thomas wouldn't let go easily. Though suspended after the embezzlement scandal, his hatred hadn't faded. This fire could very well be his way of retaliating, a brutal blow aimed at Rachel's personal life to wound her as deeply as possible. Rachel felt a bitter mix of pain and anger. She thought of Sophie, the innocent little girl who deserved a peaceful life. The fire had not only taken their home, but served as a serious warning. The past had never truly let her go. But instead of breaking, Rachel resolved not to let the darkness control her life. She told Lucas, "They can burn down my home, but they can never burn the will and love I have for my daughter." Together with Lucas, Rachel began the journey to uncover the truth, gathering evidence, connecting the clues, and working closely with the police. She understood that to protect herself and those she loved, she had to be stronger than ever, ready to face the people determined to destroy her life. Amid the pain and loss, she also felt the power of family, love, and unity. Lucas was not just a companion, but a steadfast emotional support, standing by her side through every challenge. Rachel came to realize that in life, wounds are not meant to make you fall, but to forge resilience and courage. This time, she would not let anyone stop her. She would rise, move forward, and turn her pain into strength to protect the future for herself and Sophie. After the fire at Rachel's apartment, the atmosphere at the company and among the German partners grew tenser than ever. Lucas and Rachel had to focus not only on stabilizing their new life, but also on working closely with the Berlin police to expose the dark conspiracies closing in around them. Thomas, once cold-faced and confident, was no longer at the peak of power. Evidence of embezzlement, veiled threats, and especially the clues tied to the fire had trapped him in an inescapable investigation spiral. One cold, rainy Monday, as Rachel and Lucas were discussing plans to face new challenges, the police unexpectedly showed up at the German company headquarters. They had an urgent arrest warrant for Thomas Bauer, the former senior director, someone no one had expected to collapse under the weight of his own crimes. Thomas was led out without his usual arrogant demeanor. His eyes flashed with a mix of anger and undeniable panic. He tried to hold on to his dignity, but the sound of handcuffs clicking around his wrists was a verdict he couldn't deny. Rachel stood there, watching Thomas being led away, a whirlwind of emotions rising within her, from satisfaction that justice was somewhat served, to pain knowing that the man who once was a part of her life had now driven himself to a dead end. Lucas placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, offering quiet comfort. "It's all finally coming to light. But remember, this is just the beginning. You've been incredibly strong." Thomas would face public trials, charged with embezzlement, property sabotage, and especially a dangerous revenge plot threatening others' lives. His story would no longer be about power, money, or covert schemes, but about the firm judgment of the law. In that moment, Rachel felt a gentle relief flood her soul. She thought of Sophie and the open future waiting for them both. The wounds and scars had begun to heal, slowly but inevitably, through justice. Yet Rachel also understood that life still held many challenges ahead. Dark plots might still lurk in the shadows, and she needed to stay strong, not just for herself, but for Sophie and those she loved. Thomas was arrested, but it was only the start of a new chapter, one of recovery, hope, and unfinished dreams. Rachel looked out the window as soft sunlight filtered through the trees, a quiet reminder that no matter the ups and downs, light always exists at the end of the road. After months filled with challenges and upheaval, Rachel and Lucas decided to create something more meaningful than just personal success and fame. They founded the Warren Brooks Education Fund, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping children, especially those from difficult backgrounds, gain access to language education and global skills. The fund wasn't just a social project. It became a symbol of empathy, sharing, and hope that Rachel and Lucas nurtured through their own hardships. Regular classes in English, German, communication skills, and technology provided new opportunities for many children who once seemed to have no future. Sophia, the little girl who had grown remarkably, became her mother's pride. She was invited to host a bilingual program at an important international conference where delegates from many countries gathered to discuss global education development. As Sophia stepped onto the stage, the lights shone brightly, and applause echoed throughout the hall. Her voice rang clear, fluent, and confident in both German and English, moving everyone deeply. This was not just an event. It was a living testament to the efforts and faith that Rachel had tirelessly nurtured. Amid the vibrant and emotional atmosphere of the conference, Lucas suddenly stepped onto the stage, took Rachel's hand firmly, his eyes full of love. He pulled a small box from his jacket pocket, opened it, and knelt down. "I know life isn't always easy, but one thing's certain. I want to walk every path with you, sharing every joy and sorrow. Rachel, will you marry me?" Lucas said, his voice trembling with sincerity and emotion. Sophia, acting as interpreter, relayed the proposal in both languages, causing the entire hall to erupt in applause and cheers of congratulations. In that moment, love and family bonds were not just their story. They became an inspiration to everyone present. After the proposal, Rachel quietly reflected on her journey, from lonely, painful, threatened days to this moment, standing in the radiant light of faith and love. She smiled softly, her voice a gentle message. When someone believes in you, your whole world can change. Those words were not just an end to one chapter, but the beginning of new pages filled with hope and meaning, opening a bright future for Rachel, Sophie, Lucas, and all the children empowered by the Warren Brooks Fund to soar higher and farther.